Next up, she's a 2007 graduate, according to her Facebook page, of Earlham College, who just made her triumphant return as Earlham's Director of Outdoor Education. Please welcome Kim Reid.
So my story starts 2 weeks into a 3-week-long canoe trip in the Everglades. 2 of my 9 Outward Bound students, we'll call them Edgar and Chris, had just gotten into a big fight over a bottle of mustard. Edgar had tossed the bottle of mustard towards Chris, and either he didn't toss it hard enough or Chris didn't react fast enough, but the bottle of mustard ended up in the water and sank to the bottom of the Everglades, never to be seen again. So Chris, ignoring the fact that he didn't know how to swim, stood up in the canoe, took off his PFD, and threatened to cross the 3 canoes towards Edgar in order to punch him in the face. So needless to say, our lunch took a little bit longer than we had anticipated because we had to talk about safety on the canoes and talk about assertive communication and how to properly manage your anger in the middle of the Everglades, as well as at home, at school, and in the rest of the world. So my job as a wilderness instructor for Outward Bound was to keep my students safe, but also to push them outside of their comfort zones so that they could work on whatever it was that they needed to be working on. So if that was anger management or communication, sometimes it was decision making or goal setting. But we were there as part of a special Outward Bound course that was funded by the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. And it was a prevention program to try to keep teenagers out of the correctional system. We also had some students there who had already been in trouble with the law, and so they were there court-ordered. So usually they had the choice of 3 to 6 months in a juvenile detention center or 1 month at Outward Bound. And so a lot of them picked Outward Bound, and then usually regretted it on day 3 when they realized that they would be eaten by mosquitoes. There were clouds of these little bugs that we call no-see-ums. We were bathing in water that had alligators and crocodiles in it. They were hearing stories about the 20-foot pythons in the water. We were paddling against the tide, against the wind. And then they really didn't like pooping in a bucket on the boats. Because there's no land in the Everglades, so everything you do is on the boats. And then you had to paddle that bucket around with you. So they were not excited to be there. But this particular day, they were pretty excited because it was going to be the first time in 2 weeks that we were going to be on land. Because we had paddled through all the mangroves and made it out to the Gulf of Mexico. We were just going to paddle along the shore up to Highland Beach. And that was where we were going to all get out, and we were going to do a 48-hour solo experience, which is where they could reflect and rest for 2 straight days by themselves before we would have to head back. This was also when we would do a resupply, so we would get more food, more water, switch out our poop bucket, and maybe get some more mustard, which they were all really excited about. So, unfortunately, because of the mustard incident, we did not make it to Highland Beach that night. So we had to turn off of the Gulf. We went down a river as far as we could go, but the tide was pretty far out, so we couldn't go quite as far as we wanted to. And we found a little nook that we were able to throw our anchors down to make camp for the night. See, because there is no land, so you have to sleep on the boats. And so some Outward Bound instructors from long ago had figured out this system using plywood boards that were about the width and length of the canoes, and they would stay on the bottom of the canoes during the day, and we would bring them out at night and put them on top. And then we'd use some rope to tie some of them down so they wouldn't all be slipping all over the place. To make a nice little raft for us to sleep on. So we would have dinner, talk about our plans for the next day, and then go to sleep on this raft. We had these PVC pipes that were like the skinnier ones that we would stick in the ends of the canoe straight up so that we could hang clotheslines from them and then tie up these like individual